8-year-old Darnell Johnson stood at his mother's grave, the cold wind biting through his thin jacket. Tears streamed down his face as he knelt on the frozen ground, his small hands clutching the edges of the tombstone. "Mama, please take me with you," he sobbed, his voice barely a whisper. His mother had been his world, and now, without her, life seemed unbearable. The weight of his grief was too much for his young heart to bear. Darnell's mother, Janice, had been a loving and dedicated single parent. She worked tirelessly to provide for her son, always putting his needs above her own. Her sudden death from a heart attack had left Darnell in a state of shock and despair. The social services had placed him in a temporary foster home, but he felt isolated and misunderstood. His mother's grave had become his only solace, a place where he could feel close to her and pour out his heart. As he cried, an elderly black woman named Mrs. Williams approached the cemetery. She had come to visit her late husband's grave, a routine she had maintained for years. Her heart ached as she saw the boy in distress. She watched for a moment, feeling a deep sense of empathy. Mrs. Williams had lost her own son years ago and understood the pain of losing a loved one. Moved by the boy's grief, Mrs. Williams walked over and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sweetheart, why are you out here alone?" she asked softly. Darnell looked up, his tear-filled eyes meeting her kind gaze. "I miss my mama," he choked out, his voice trembling. Mrs. Williams felt her heart break for him. She knelt beside him, pulling him into a comforting embrace. After a few moments, she asked, "What's your name, child?" "Darnell," he replied quietly. Mrs. Williams nodded, her mind racing with thoughts. She knew she couldn't leave him there alone. "Darnell, why don't you come with me? You can tell me all about your mama, and I'll make you some hot cocoa. How does that sound?" Darnell hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He was tired, cold, and desperate for some warmth and kindness. Mrs. Williams took his hand and led him to her car, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she couldn't replace his mother, but she could offer him a safe and loving environment. When they arrived at her cozy home, Mrs. Williams made good on her promise of hot cocoa. She listened attentively as Darnell talked about his mother, sharing memories and stories. She offered words of comfort and wisdom, her own experiences lending her a unique perspective on grief. Over the next few days, she contacted social services and expressed her desire to foster Darnell. Given her background and stable home environment, they agreed to let Darnell stay with her temporarily. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Darnell began to heal, slowly but surely. Mrs. Williams enrolled him in school, helped him with his homework, and introduced him to the local community. She became the grandmother he never had, providing a sense of stability and love that he desperately needed. Mrs. Williams was deeply involved in the local church and community center, and she made sure Darnell was included in all activities, from choir practice to sports events. One day, while they were baking cookies together, Darnell looked up at Mrs. Williams and asked, "Can I call you Grandma?" Her eyes filled with tears as she hugged him tightly. "Of course you can, my dear, of course you can." That moment solidified the bond between them. They became inseparable, and Darnell's life began to blossom under Mrs. Williams's care. As the years passed, Darnell thrived. He excelled in school, made friends, and found joy in life again. Mrs. Williams attended every school event, cheering him on with pride. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and milestones together, creating new memories and traditions. Each milestone was a testament to the love and support that Mrs. Williams provided, and Darnell's gratitude was evident in his every achievement. When Darnell graduated from high school with honors, Mrs. Williams was there, her heart swelling with pride. He had become a confident, compassionate young man, ready to face the world. He went on to college, pursuing a degree in social work, inspired by the kindness and support he had received. He wanted to give back, to help children who were facing hardships similar to his own. Throughout his journey, Darnell never forgot the miracle that brought Mrs. Williams into his life. She had been his saving grace, offering him love and guidance when he needed it most. And Mrs. Williams, in turn, found a renewed sense of purpose and joy in being a grandmother to a boy who needed her. Their bond grew stronger with each passing year, and their story became a source of inspiration for many in their community. Their story became a testament to the power of love and compassion, showing that even in the darkest of times, a miracle can happen when least expected. It reminded everyone that sometimes family is not just about blood, but about the bonds we form with those who touch our hearts and change our lives forever. The community rallied around them, celebrating their unique bond and drawing strength from their story. Darnell's journey from a grieving boy to a successful young man was marked by the love and support of Mrs. Williams. She taught him the values of resilience, kindness, and the importance of giving back. Together, they showed that no matter how dire the circumstances, hope and love can pave the way for a brighter future. As Darnell continued his studies and eventually began his career as a social worker, he carried with him the lessons he had learned from Mrs. Williams. He became a beacon of hope for others, always ready to lend a helping hand and offer words of encouragement. His work touched countless lives, and he often shared his story to inspire others to overcome their challenges. Mrs. Williams lived to see Darnell achieve his dreams, and she remained a guiding presence in his life. Their bond was unbreakable, a testament to the miraculous power of love and compassion. Darnell's success was a reflection of the unwavering support he had received from Mrs. Williams, and he made it his mission to honor her legacy through his work. In the end, Darnell and Mrs. Williams' story was more than just a tale of overcoming adversity. It was a powerful reminder that miracles can happen, even in the most unexpected ways. Their journey touched the hearts of many, inspiring them to believe in the power of love and the importance of reaching out to those in need. And as they continued to create new memories and support each other, their story stood as a beacon of hope for all who heard it.